Mike. What day is it, Mike? It's hump day. Yes, we are halfway through the week. And on Monday, we were talking about one of the first sets of temperament and those popular temperament profiles that you've probably taken, the Myers-Briggs type indicator, disc profiles, Spiro B's, Berkman's, the list is endless. However, even if you have taken those personality assessments, what do you remember from it? I mean, we all remember whether we were, you know, uh, extroverts or introverts, but as it got to drill down into the other three sets of characteristics or archetypes, as Carl Jung would say, how much do we remember? And more importantly, what do we need to be aware of? Because, I mean, we have our strengths, we also have our weaknesses. Let's dive in to the very first continuum of introversion and extroversion. Let me pop out of the screen for a second here. All right, there we go. So we're going to be talking today about the two continuums. Our episode 1 is our approach to people. Our approach to people. This is how we are as social creatures, if you will, our approach to our social environment. And of course, you'll remember on one side we have the extrovert, and the opposite side we have the introvert. And I had shared with you that I was an introvert. And some of my friends call me a closet introvert because, of course, I try to be very entertaining. Uh, I'm in the studio. There's only a handful of people here. So that's kind of safe for an introvert. When I'm out in public, especially around people I don't know or don't know well, then I have a tendency to sit back and listen instead of, talking. So let's talk about that. So our approach to our social environment, our approach to people is a continuum. One side of the continuum is being an extrovert, and the other is an introvert. Now, when we talk about attributes of each, we're either one side of that red line or we're the other side of the red line. You might have some psychological issues if you are what we call the chameleon and you are the red line. You're either one or the other, generally speaking, even if it's just slightly. And of course, introverts can say there are circumstances that they're in where they have to behave more extroverted. And there are extroverts that have had to learn to be a little more introverted. And these are the attributes that I'm talking about. The first one is we describe the extrovert as being outgoing. They're gregarious. They're people gatherers. And they're out there. They enjoy it. They gain their energy around other people. But sometimes they have a tendency to overtake conversations. And people want to be listened to as well as wanting to hear what you have to say. So when we talk too much and we leave people out, you may alienate them by doing that. Now, of course, introverts were known as being reserved, like me. Not really, I guess, huh? Introverts were more introspective, meaning we're more in our heads, thinking our thoughts, our ideas, and we do a lot less talking. So we're not gregarious, although we're not, unless you're an extreme extrovert and you hide in your room 24/7, which, the pandemic was perfect for us. It gave us some downtime to a certain degree, at least the first part. The second part, I was right here on Zoom, and it was like, I don't know. It was challenging. I think when we had the interaction with our students back and forth, I enjoy that. That's a fun part for me, but it is taxing on my energy. And when we're talking about introversion and extroversion, we're really talking about how you gain your source of personal energy. Now, this is not woo woo, stuff. You have a personal energy. Everybody knows we're basically copper top batteries, right? You saw the Matrix. But extroverts are able to gain energy through interaction with other people. They get excited, and that motivates them. Introverts, we lose our energy being around groups of people. Now, bear in mind, human beings were all social creatures. As an extrovert, I could never think of being completely isolated for a long period of time, like the pandemic. Probably wasn't as hard on me as it was on our extroverts. But we are social creatures. We do want to go out. Like I said on Monday, please invite us to your party because there may be, an opportunity for us to connect with somebody we know. We feel more comfortable that way when they're total strangers. It takes a while for us to break the ice, but you too, as an introvert, can make friends at a party. I've done it. I know. So the next part is our social circles. Now, extroverts have relatively large social circles. However, many of those people we would consider, well, acquaintances. Our circle is very small. And as a result of that, we have probably a little more intimate or deeper relationships with the small group that we surround ourselves with. And we have a relative high comfort zone in sharing personal things with those trusted people. When we're surrounded by acquaintances, we have a tendency to clam up a little bit. The next area is, excuse me, share versus listen. Now, extroverts being very outgoing and being gregarious, they like to break the ice. And I like that about extroverts. I like someone who will break the ice for me because I don't want to break the ice, okay? So they'll talk. They very talkative people, very excited about having the opportunity to talk and share ideas, but they are less likely to listen on a very deep level when they're talking because you can't talk and hear at the same time. And I'm not anti-extrovert at all, believe me. Introverts, if you can tie yourself to an extrovert, have them part of your small circle, because everybody in my small circle is not a bunch of extroverts or introverts, I should say. I have some extroverts in there, and they help me overcome. And I have a very mild social anxiety. I'm not an extreme introvert. I'm probably closer to the red line, like 3/4 of the distance. Again, so being kind of the opposite of extroverts, we have a tendency to enjoy listening more than sharing. We don't like to be the center of attention necessarily. So we like to listen to what people have to say. We learn a lot from them. The next is that extroverts have a tendency to persuade. It's a part of their nature. They like to sell people on things and ideas. So they're focused more on persuasion than trying to understand. They're big picture people. Okay. Extroverts see the big picture, they see everything. Introverts, we have a tendency to, well, see the smaller things. Understand versus persuade. We want to understand the details. You can give me the broad brush, but I really want to know more, especially how it impacts me. Right? Because I don't want to have to get up on stage and tap dance or anything like that. I mean, like I said on Monday, the most outrageous thing I think I've done on video is singing to my coffee, which is an embarrassing ritual, but I do love my coffee. And, well, I've been known to sing to it from time to time. Just so happy in the morning to see my coffee. Again, extroverts are more assertive. They're more likely to get into leadership roles. They're more likely to be team leaders because they take initiative. They're assertive people. As an introvert, well, I have a tendency to lead from the background. I lead and work with teams mostly. That's been my whole career is being a team facilitator and working with everybody from the executive staff team to frontline work teams. And so I like to steer them in a direction and generally have one of them be the formal team leader, where I kind of go in the background and interject things to get conversation going, but I'm not the center of attention. So we're more passive. And that's the downfall of a lot of us as introverts. If we're really strong introverts, then we have, you know, no assertiveness or very low assertiveness to the point where, well, we don't go very far. And some introverts are okay with that because they like safety. We're more have a tendency towards safety than the extroverts who are can be risk takers, right? Sometimes you need to risk a little. So in having this conversation, understand that you may be an extrovert, you may be an introvert. You're probably not at extremes. You're somewhere, close to that red line or not far from the red line. But we also need to be aware of not just our strengths in those traits, but we have to be aware of our weaknesses. And to, hey, if you're an introvert like myself, put yourself out there. Let me tell you, the first time I got in front of the camera, when Cup of Joe started last March 22, it was it was daunting. It took me time to get comfortable with that. Where extroverts, man, they're really good. They get up there and it's like they got a script. They know what's going on. So these are the attributes of extroverts and introverts. And if you didn't do it on Monday, I want you to make sure that you kind of got a feel for whether you're an extrovert or you've kind of got the feel that you're an introvert. That being said, please put down, even if it's just an E or an I, put that down in there. And I'll tell you why, because as we go through the series, you're going to build up your 4-letter temperament type. And then we're going to do a drill down on that to give you more and more insight in terms of capitalizing on your strengths and bringing up your weaknesses. Now, many of you know, especially those that I've met on LinkedIn, is that I'm a researcher. That's what I do. Kind of makes sense. Researcher, introvert. Yeah, I get that all the time. But we have a dynamic in research, especially in this type of assessment, right? That we fill out the survey from the standpoint of how we believe ourselves to be. But can you be objective? I don't think so. I'll be honest with you. Being objective about oneself is kind of an oxymoron. However, you know yourself fairly well for the most part. And so you're going to respond with how you believe you are. And we call this the believed perceived paradox. Perceived is how others see you. And the truth is actually somewhere in between. So I would find, a friend, a spouse, or a partner, someone who you have high trust in, and tell them, I think I'm an introvert. And they'll be like, oh, no, you're no introvert. You're an extrovert. Well, you got to think about that and ask, what are some of the things that I do that make you think that I'm an extrovert when I think I'm an introvert? And when they are able to give you examples, like one right after the other, then you may still be an introvert, but you're going to have to push yourself closer to that red center line. The believed perceived is a real dynamic. So it's super important that after this, and hopefully you get someone, a friend or your spouse or your partner, or whoever it might be, involved in this so that you guys can kind of bounce off of each other. Oh, you're not like that, or you're like this, to really give yourself a well-rounded view of who you are. And we call these blind spots. We all have blind spots. There's nothing wrong with that. However, there can be some detrimental results from our blind spots. And that's why it's so important that we get someone else, a close confidant, who will be able to give us feedback in terms of what we do, that we are unaware of what we do, like constant interruptions in conversations. That's something an extrovert would do. But they do it only because they have a really great idea and they want to share it, but they're afraid that they're going to forget it if they have to wait for you to finish talking. It makes sense. So think about that. I hope you're having a wonderful week. It is Wednesday. We are halfway to the weekend. And I hope so much that you will share this with your friends. Subscribe if you haven't already done so. And I will see you Monday for our Monday morning cup of Joe. And next set of temperament profile stuff.